Well, I'm going to do a short video on acorns, picking acorns, preparing them for food, because in some areas they're plentiful and easy to come by from late summer through the fall, and can be stored easily, just like squirrels do. You can store them for the winter. They're maybe not the tastiest nut there is in the wild, but they are very useful. And I would be failing you, I think, if I wasn't to touch on acorns a little bit. And then after that, I'm going to make an announcement.
When you face your fears, a final victory decide. You can't run away and hide, run away and hide. I'm just trying to find my way back home, find my way back home. When the thing you fear has come for you is at your door, you can't run away and hide, run away and hide.
I'm outside of Prescott picking acorns from small oak trees. These are like shrub live oak, these scrub oak type trees. And you've got to kind of look around. You got to walk around the woods to find trees that actually have nuts growing on them, because a lot of them are like politicians. They don't have any nuts at all. So yeah, I could vote for this tree if it was on a ballot somewhere. When I pick these, I'm knocking the crown off when I pull the nut off, so that makes a little less work later, because we're going to have to peel them before we can soak them and, you know, go through the process. So here's probably a good meal's worth of small acorns. Alright, so here's the deal. I'm going to peel all of these. I'll show you how. If you let them sit for a while, these will peel off by, you know, just with your thumb. But since these are actually fresh, I have to use a knife to cut, to slice it and then pull it open. Slice it on both sides. And then it will peel off. Boom, done. Okay. If you let them sit for a couple days, they're easier to peel. But I have to assume you're probably hungry or something if you're doing this. You might actually want to eat, so that's why I'm doing it the hard way and just making them fresh. By the way, you can eat these raw. They're just filled with tannic acid. It's the same acid that's in a grape skin that makes the grape skin bitter. And of course that's utilized in the winemaking process. Tannic acid is in a lot of things. But it's that bitter flavor that you want to soak out of it. At least you want to get a lot of it out of it. So when you eat them raw, you're just going to be eating a lot of tannic acid, which isn't sweet. So these are the acorns. Put them in a container with water and leave it overnight. So in the day, this very clear, clean water should turn, well, after a few hours it should be yellowish. And that means the tannins have leached out of the acorns and into the water. So you dump that yellow water and put more in and do it again. Alright, so this has been sitting for just about 8 hours. and you can see how yellow the water's become. Alright, this will be the third soaking I've done actually. The first one I showed you was a little deceptive because I only waited 8 hours, and I should have waited 10 to 12 hours before dumping it. The water, when you dump it, should look a little bit like urine. It should be about that color, a good healthy urine, but it should not taste like urine, because if it does taste like urine, it probably is, and somebody played a silly practical joke on you. So anyway, the acorn just has a slight bitter flavor, just slightly bitter, which is what I want, because if it has no bitter flavor at all, then it doesn't have a flavor. So now, I can dry these acorns, and I could use them as part of like a trail mix, right? Add some dried berries, some wild sunflower seeds, stuff like this, and have some sort of a pack food that you can take with you. Or you can grind it up and make it into a mush, sort of similar to oatmeal for breakfast, or fry it up. There's just any kind of, any way you want to cook it or prepare it, you can do. So, I'm going to show you what happens when you completely dehydrate these acorns. What was a set of politician-size acorns is now a set of famous TV survivalist-size acorns, or at least in theory. I don't know this from personal experience, but from observation, let me explain something to you. You ever watch these made-for-TV survival shows? I can't. I've tried. I've watched fragments of several of them, but it's pretty much always the same thing. Some guy's out in somewhere on the other side of the world, and he's hiking, and he comes across some fresh elephant crap, and he's thirsty, so he picks up the elephant crap and squeezes the water from it into his mouth for drinking water. And what he doesn't even consider mentioning is that if you follow the tracks of this elephant herd either direction, you'll end up at a water hole, because elephants walk from water hole to water hole. So he's just drinking the water from the elephant dung just to make himself seem like some sort of a real manly man or something. I mean, this is my theory. I don't know. I can't tell you what's really going on in their heads. Or you've got a show where these guys are completely surrounded with vegetation that's edible. On all sides there's vegetarian, vegan type edible food, but instead of eating any of that food, they don't even point that out. Instead, they're eating live, wriggling, scorpions or something. So, in theory, all I can guess, because they're not telling the truth about what you really should do to survive if you're in a survival situation, I'm guessing this helps them get laid when they get home the next day or something. I don't know. It's a guess. I'm not sure. So what I think is maybe there's a possibility they might be compensating for something. And that's why I'm sorry I can't watch those shows. By the way, if I ever become a famous TV survivalist, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach a couple of those little tiny acorns to the front of my pants as a reminder of what it takes to be on TV, to get ratings, to get people to view your show. In the meanwhile, you can see my viewership here on YouTube, and it's not quite the same, is it? All that we really need, I think, is a little bit of honesty when we're talking about living free off the land or surviving and whatever. And living free off the land doesn't have to be that difficult. It doesn't have to be some miserable experience where nobody's going to do that. Honestly, nobody is going to squeeze the juice out of elephant crap, and they don't have to. Almost nobody is actually going to eat a live scorpion. They don't have to. And it's disingenuous to act like they do have to in order to survive, when all the survivalist is doing is trying to make himself look like the big man. Oh, look at me, you'd never do this, you're not as cool as me, I'm gutsy. Yeah, well, that's not really survivalism, that's not really living free off the land. Living free off the land is not that difficult. It's something that all of humanity has done since the beginning of time, since the beginning of human beings. If you believe in evolution, since before human beings existed, we have lived free off the land, and it wasn't that difficult. It wasn't trapping cave rats or eating, Africanized bee honey. It wasn't any of that stuff. It was simply taking the foods that were available free in nature and eating them. Over time, we learned how to trap and how to hunt and how to fish. But really, do you think that the first human beings who ever existed on this planet came out of the womb with a bow and arrow? I don't think so. We learned to eat meat over time as a matter of survival. And, of course, that's been beat into us by our culture and maybe by the farming, dairy industry, the cattle industry. I don't know. They tell us, well, you have to eat meat in order to get the proteins that your cells are built out of. Really? The proteins also come from legumes. Anything that comes in a bean pod, it comes from nuts and seeds, and there are other vegetables that have those proteins. And then, if that's not working out and you're not getting enough protein, you can move from there to fish, I'm sure. So we need to be honest with each other. Anybody can live free off the land and survive. And now I told you I was going to make an announcement, so here it is. My closest friends already know this, so this is for people who don't know me very well. I am planning to leave civilization, go out into the wild and live off the land. I've been planning this for a long time, actually, and it's getting close. Soon. I'm not going to say when. I'm not putting a date on it, but soon. I plan to. And I'm making preparations to do that. You'll notice if you go to some of my other videos, I think I have I don't know if it's under my video archives called Dangerous or Political or whatever. There's a video of me saying, I am John Galt. We made those videos, a bunch of us did, for the movie that's already come out now called Atlas Shrugged, and it's based on the book by Ayn Rand, and I like a lot of Ayn Rand's thinking. I'm not 100% Ayn Rand. I do believe, for instance, in altruism. I just don't believe that altruism is the government's responsibility. I think it's my responsibility and your responsibility as individuals, that when we find somebody in need, find a family that needs help, the elderly lady at church needs her roof redone, that we take it upon ourselves and we make it our responsibility to take care of the needs of those around us if God has blessed us, so that we're able to not only take care of ourselves, but we've been given excess also to take care of others. However, the last entity in the world to be doing altruistic deeds is the one entity that was designed for the sole purpose of controlling and manipulating people through violence and force and coercion: government. Why would you put an entity who is force, who is coercion, who is violence, that is the only power they have over other people, why would you put them in charge of charity? Why wouldn't you put people who love to help others, who love others, who would never use force, who try to accomplish what needs to be done to help people through love and compassion? Why wouldn't you have those people in charge of charities and altruism? Why would you put something that is purely violence and force and coercion in charge of charity? Only because you refuse to take responsibility yourself for the needs of the people around you. Only because you yourself refuse to take money out of your own pocket and give it to your neighbor to help your neighbor who's in a very desperate situation. You won't take responsibility, so you're going to put it on others. You're going to make the government, you demand that the government force other people at gunpoint to give them their money so that they can distribute that. And then, of course, politicians act like they're all heroic and wonderful and, oh, aren't I generous? I gave from other people's money to help with this need over here, food stamps or HUD housing or whatever. And all government does is it robs people at gunpoint. There wouldn't be any large-scale wars if it wasn't for big governments. There would have been no World War II if it wasn't for Adolf Hitler. What was he? He was the end of government. That is the natural end point of government. As it gets more and more and more powerful, eventually you end up with some dictator who can do anything he wants, and he has all the troops and armies and all the money that that comes in from that society at his disposal to do anything he wants. That is the end result of government, that level of fascism and tyranny. Without Adolf Hitler, there would have been no World War II. Before there were big governments, there were little local skirmishes between tribes or clans, but nothing on that scale. You see, because government is purely force and coercion and violence, and that is the only power government has. That is the only thing government can do that you and I can't do. If you meet somebody in a dark alley and you point a gun at them and you say, hand me your wallet, and there's two $50 bills in their wallet, and you pull out one and toss the wallet back at them, what are you? Are you a generous guy because you only took half of what's in his wallet? Or are you an armed robber because you robbed the guy at gunpoint of half of what was in his wallet? You know the answer to that. Funny how we use a different mentality. There's a total different scale of ethics that we assign to government versus the people. There is no difference. No difference if a government points the gun or you point the gun. It's armed robbery. The point is moving out of the city, moving out of society, and getting into the wilderness and living off the land. This is why. Every dime you or I pay in taxes, we are supporting that beast. We are supporting the violence. And different people, whether they call themselves conservative or call themselves liberal, and both of those terms are BS, by the way. They just denote whether you're on this team or that team. Are you a Republican? Yay, rah, rah, Republican, team spirit. Or are you a Democrat? Rah, rah, Democrats. And those terms, conservative and liberal, have nothing to do with either of those parties. Neither one of them is conservative, and neither of them is liberal, when you really look up those terms and the actual meanings of them. But whether you call yourself a liberal or a conservative, you will have different concerns about what the government is doing with your money. For instance, some people are concerned about the fact that our armed forces aren't being used for national defense, but are being used for offensive wars on the other side of the world. And I can tell you one thing about war that is always true. You cannot help collateral damage. Collateral damage is innocent civilians who get in the way of the bullets and the bombs. You can't help it. So you have to keep war to a minimum. It's only for defensive purposes. It is not to go to the other side of the world and bomb the hell out of people because it would be in the best interest of certain corporations or whatever. There's no best interest of the people when you go to the other side of the world. People who already don't respect you begin hating you and hating you and hating you, and their children grow up to hate you so bad they would do anything in their power to kill you because you killed mommy, you killed daddy, you killed grandpa, right? They don't understand that. Little children don't understand that. You cannot help collateral damage in war. You can't help it. If there's war, innocent people die. That is the end of the story. So you keep it to a minimum. They attack us here, we kill them. We send them home, okay? So some people have a problem with us bombing the hell out of other countries and making, preemptive war on other countries because of all the thousands of innocent civilians who have died because of it. And we could have just stayed in our own neighborhood. You're paying for that with your taxes. Other people have no problem with that at all. No problem with little babies in Afghanistan getting blown to smithereens by accident. Yeah, I can't help it. It's collateral damage. You can't help it, right? No problem with that. But you do have a problem maybe with your tax money going to pay
for people's abortions because they just don't feel like they're ready to have a kid. Some of you have a problem with that. So no matter what it is, there's a problem because the government comes to you, takes your money by force against your will without asking, and then they put it towards whatever they want, whatever they feel like. Just the basic, instead of one dictator, instead of one Hitler or Mussolini or whatever, we've got a committee of dictators called Congress and so forth. So, but you have no idea, most of you. Some of you are awake and aware and you've been paying attention. Most of you have no idea the level of corruption, not only in government, because I am not going to go off on this anti-government kick and not point the finger where it belongs, which is at the people, the society themselves that is rotting from the inside out. Government is just a reflection of that. The corruption in society, going from the bottom to the top, from the inside out, is so permeating. Let me describe for you an example of what I mean. When I was a kid, we had apple trees in the backyard, big garden. My grandparents, who also lived in the same state in Washington, had an even bigger garden. They had 2 massive gardens and a lot of trees. And so what would happen is they would pick the apples and they'd fill up big old 5-gallon buckets or whatever. And so I'm going to tell you the analogy of the apple barrel. What happens in an apple barrel or a big bucket filled with apples is somewhere on the bottom. It's always on the bottom, on the inside. It's never on the top. An apple begins rotting, and whatever apples it touches, they begin rotting. And whatever they're touching, then they rot until the whole thing has rotted away. So pretend that you live in the country and you know the nature of the apple barrel, and somebody from the city moves out to a local property with a lot of apple trees, so they pick their apples. And a while later you say, you call them up on the phone and you're having a conversation, you tell them, you got a rotten apple at the bottom of your barrel. They're like, I do not. I just was in there. I just looked at my apples. I took some off. I ate some. There's no rotten apple in there. You said, yeah, there is a rotting apple at the bottom of the barrel. You need to pull that out. No, there's not. How would you even know? You haven't even been over here. Because that's the nature of an apple barrel. There will be. And it's going to cause the rest of your barrel to rot, so you need to pull it out. He ignores you because he doesn't believe you. So sometime later, you say, you're having a conversation, you go over to his house and you go, you're looking at his apple barrel and you got some rotten apples down in the bottom of your barrel. It's like, how could you even tell? Well, first of all, I know that there would be because it's the nature of an apple barrel. Secondly, I can smell it. You can't smell that? No, I don't smell rotten apples. What are you talking about? So he ignores you. So sometime later, you come by and you say, some time has passed. You're like, most of your apples in this barrel are rotten. You've only got some good apples on the top. He's like, he pulls off an apple. They're all good. Look, they're all good. I don't see any rotten apples. You're so full of it. You don't know what you're talking about, you stupid hick. So he ignores you. And then sometime later you come back and you see that they're all rotten except for just 3 or 4 on top. And you say, see, your whole apple barrel is rotted. I told you this would happen. You needed to pull out that rotten apple. He goes, no, they're not all rotted. See, there's 3 or 4 right here on top that are still good. You see how ludicrous that is? Because it's the nature of the apple barrel. And one apple spreads the rot to the rest until the whole barrel rots. And at some point, and you tell them, you got 3 or 4 good apples, good. Pull them out, wash them, clean them off, separate them, and dump out the whole apple barrel. You're done with it. Well, at some point, a society will get to the place where everything is so decayed and rotted and corrupted that all you can do, you can't fix it anymore. You can't pull out the rotten apples anymore. All you can do is pull out the good apples, wash them off, and let the rest go to hell. That's all that's left to do. Every society comes to this place if you allow it to corrupt itself and you don't take care of it early on. And in our society, we're coming to that point. We're either already there or we're almost there, where the only thing left is to Salvage what's good and let the rest of it rot. And that's what moving out of this crap hole and living off the land separated is all about. It's getting out of it because it can't be changed anymore. You can't change the political corruption anymore through voting. It's too corrupt. Name something you can change anymore. It's so corrupt through and through. And you could pull out any one of those apples. Religion, and you got your TV preachers, and it's just a big old zoo and a circus. You could pull out any apple out of there. Take something, a government agency, take CPS. One of the things that CPS does is they will find children, good-looking children by Hitler's standards. Blonde hair, blue eyes. This is true, and all you have to do is look into it. Do not take my word for it. Search, research. You know the truth when you research it, okay? So, certain people in CPS will find some good-looking kids, who are healthy from a good home. Somebody calls in a report that the kid got a spanking, right? So the kid's being abused, right? So they go over there, they take the kids out of the home. The parents are fighting tooth and nail to get their kids back. The parents really are good parents, and they're responsible, and they take great care of their children. The children love the parents love the children. They're fighting to get their kids back, and the next thing they know, the children have been sold to somebody else through a process called adoption. On the other end of the scale, in CPS corruption, is children that have been so damaged that these CPS, these caseworkers, don't take them out of the home. Instead, they find ways to profit from the child pornography and the child prostitution, or just put them into the foster care system, into homes that use them for child slavery, and they find ways to profit from the children in that way. So this CPS, this agency that was a great idea, it sounded all altruistic and everything, has become so corrupted that this is going on underneath your nose, and you deny that it's even real. You think I'm a conspiracy nut because I'm telling you about it. Research it. Oh, and you'll see the articles, and you'll see the stories, and you'll see the videos, and it's right there in front of your face, but you won't do a thing about it because you'll say, oh, this is BS. I don't believe it because I've never heard it before. You only believe what you've heard before from people that you trust. That's it. Anything new, you won't believe it if you're a pretty normal American. And so, this whole system, and it doesn't even matter. I'm not even talking about the USA. I'm talking about all the countries of the earth is that screwed up. Government, every agency, everything is so screwed up that at some point you have two choices. Blow your brains out because there's nothing you can do, or get out of the system. Just get out and go live off the land. Okay, as long as you're making an income that's taxable, they're going to come after your money to fund this corruption and this evil. Because that's what it is. For those of you who don't believe there's any such thing as evil or sin or any of that, I just described it. I described evil and sin to you in the CPS story, which is true. Okay, so I know you don't believe it, and you're going to... I know, unicorns flying and farting rainbows and stuff, and that's fine, but for some of us, we've seen the truth firsthand. I've seen firsthand the corruption in the election system, the electronic ballot system. I've been there, I've seen it, I know what goes on. When you vote, your vote does not count. It does not matter. I'm sorry. I've seen it firsthand. We've tried to approach the people who are in charge of the system to show them the Trojan horse type programs that are put into the electronic voting systems and so forth, to show them all that stuff, the proof that it's there, and they ignore it and they laugh and scoff. Oh, you guys are just a bunch of conspiracy nuts. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to vote in such a way to change the system through elections when that whole system is rigged? Anyway, what is democracy but the majority of the people voting to plunder the minority who cannot outvote them? Here's these people, they want to plunder those people to take their money by force against their will to pay for this program that they like. there's this group of people over here trying to plunder that group of people to take their money, and or just to manipulate them. What is a politician other than a control freak who has made it all the way into the political system? You see control freaks every day. You see people, guys trying to control their woman. He owns her. Women who are just horrible parents, who are just manipulative control freaks with their kids. Teachers who do that stuff. Law enforcement officers who only got the job so that they could control and manipulate people and boss them around. And once you work your way up through the system, you become the president or something. I said all of that about society and government and all that stuff, and I'm not really talking about the people, but the people combined our society. Let me tell you what I mean. You've got some cans of paint. Here's red paint, and there's yellow paint, and there's blue paint, and here's green and purple, and you got all these pretty colors. So you would think that with all these pretty rainbow colors of paint, if you dumped them all together, you'd get something really spectacular and brilliant and pretty, right? So you take all these colors of paint and you dump the red and the blue and the green and yellow and everything into a big bucket and you stir it all up thoroughly, and what do you come up with? What awesome color do you have? Brown. Well, some of you might think that brown is the prettiest color in the world. This is just an illustration. So, as you know, brown is actually the color of poo. That's, you get all these different pretty foods, your green peppers and your carrots and whatever, and then when it comes out the other end, it's brown, right? Okay, so just for the sake of explaining what I'm talking about, the brown, the end result of dumping all these beautiful people together into one pot is mediocrity. It's mediocrity. You see, it's the dumbest idea of the most brilliant people, and the brightest idea of the stupidest people. That's the middle, the mediocre. That's the end result. That's society. That's when you take all these beautiful people with all their wonderful ideas and personalities, you dump them all together into one place. And the elections and the voting, when you have ballot initiatives, I'm not talking about voting for major offices like president, where the result is already predetermined, as I've explained, and most of you don't believe. What I'm talking about is just what happens in day-to-day society, and the end result. It starts from the bottom, from the center, from the middle, at the very bottom of the apple barrel. It works its way through the entire barrel until the entire system is totally corrupted. Now, people have been trying to enlighten people and to bring them the truth and to help them understand what's going on and to make changes and to do good things. And I'm tired. I'm tired of it all. There's nothing more I can do. There's nothing more anybody else can do, because the system is owned by a group of billionaires, and we know who they are. I know who they are. I don't know why you don't. If you don't, they're billionaire families who own the whole system, because they own all the corporations, and those corporations own the smaller corporations under that umbrella, and through these corporations they finance the election campaigns. They basically manipulate the whole system to make it turn out the way they want. They own the whole system. They own the federal banks, not just the U.S. Federal Reserve. They're in charge. They're the billionaires. They're the ones playing the chess game with live human beings, manipulating and moving people around, and you see how much power you have over them. This is the only power I have over them, to withdraw from that system and to not allow them to have any more of my money or my cooperation anymore. And I'm going to tell you what, I have brought this up to friend after friend after friend who all think it's just the coolest thing, it's a great idea, but they're not going to do it, so that's for me, it's not for them. So I'm opening this up. I'm going to have an open campfire, I'm telling you. Anybody who wants to join me to do this, I don't care if you are a federal agent. Good. Join the party. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you hate my guts. I don't care if you mistrust me. You know what I'm saying? I want people who hate me to be there with me to see that I'm a decent human being, and so are you. And let's learn to work together, because you know what? It's time to do something, and we've tried everything else. And the system of violence and martial uprisings, this has been going on for century after century after century. And you use violence to take over a violent, corrupt system, and you know what? Your new system is just going to be the same thing, because it was built on violence. It was built on coercion and force. And the new people that come in, the new dictator is no better than the old dictator. The Republican president who comes in to replace Obama is not going to be any better than Obama. It was already predetermined who the Republican candidate was going to be by the people who were funding each of the candidates in the Republican primary who were good enough for them, because there was no difference really between those Republicans and Obama. So they win because they've got the money, they own the media, they own everything. There's nothing you can do. So I'm just saying, it maybe is about time for us just to come out and let Babylon burn, but not us with it. Sometimes an acorn is just an acorn.